You know the feeling when your husband says something and it triggers you, and maybe your heart starts racing and you start sweating a little bit, and you just feel the anger rush through you, and you just have to respond. Either you have to set the record straight or defend yourself or call out how he's being hypocritical or whatever it is, but you just feel so triggered. And so you respond. And maybe for a second, it feels satisfying. It feels good to just let that out and say what you wanted to say. But then after, you're left looking at the distance and disconnection between you and your husband and wondering how you can get out of this argument cycle. Maybe you're looking at your marriage and wondering why you seem to constantly be fighting, and that it seems that you can't get a word in edgewise unless it slips you down into this negative, slippery slope where you end up disconnected and distant again. If that's you, if you're a wife who desperately wants to get out of the argument cycle and feel connected and calm and peaceful and have harmony in her marriage again, then this is for you. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 ways, 3 tools for your toolkit that you'll be able to use in order to help you stop the fighting and not take the bait in your marriage so that you can have a more calm and peaceful and joyful relationship. Now, I want to share with you today, because I'm speaking from, yes, my work as a coach with many, many wives, but also from personal experience. I know for me, whenever I used to feel really triggered, whether that was something that my husband said that I just felt like I had to set the record straight or defend myself, or even later on as a mom, when a toddler did something out of control in public and I felt triggered and I just wanted to melt and hide under the surface of the floor, right, and not be seen by anybody. Those feelings, it can just happen so quickly, right? One moment we are just processing and hearing what they're saying, and the next, the word lava has already come out and we've already expressed ourselves and said everything that can be coming from a place of a lot of anger and resentment or just defensiveness, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be awful. Sometimes it can just be getting defensive. And what I found was that even when what I was saying back wasn't necessarily, quote unquote, wrong or bad, the problem was I was still feeding it and therefore participating in an argument and feeding the flames, right, of the disagreement, of the heated discussion. And even in moments when our conversation on the surface felt calm and steady, and the words weren't, the words were carefully chosen, the fact that I had taken the bait, if it was painful or not enjoyable, then I was already feeding it and participating in it. And I know for me, a lot of the reasons that I would take the bait, and what I mean by take the bait is participate in a discussion that was not connecting, that I really didn't want to participate in at all. But it felt at the time almost impossible to not participate in. It felt like I had to. It felt like I had an obligation to respond. And I know for me, a lot of what caused that was, boom, I would feel triggered. And then before I knew it, I was flying into my response, which was very often about correcting him, correcting what he had said wrong in my view, or trying to explain my side and my perspective so that I could feel more understood. I thought if he can just see my perspective or understand what I'm thinking or what I was thinking when I said that or when I did XYZ, then we will be able to reconnect because he'll see that I was right after all and he was wrong. Right? Really what I was looking for was, I wasn't looking to win an argument. I was looking to reconnect. And I find that so often with so many of the wives that I speak to, maybe in the moment it might feel like you want to win, right? Like, yes, I want to win. But really, what so many of us women want is to reconnect. And that would really actually be the win, is to reconnect. But reconnection includes feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling understood. And so it can be really difficult to bypass that and to say, well, okay, I'll just let him think what he thinks, right? That could be really, really hard. You might feel really tempted or even responsible for calling out his hypocrisy or getting him to acknowledge where he was wrong and where you were right, or to defend your intentions, right? To defend yourself, to set the record straight that you weren't in the wrong or that you had good intentions, whatever it was for you. And I know for me, one of the things that was really transformational, really gave me a breakthrough and incredibly freeing, was the realization that whenever my husband said something that felt triggering in the moment, really, I could see that as an invitation to an argument. And the thing about invitations is you always get to decide if you are going to attend or not, right? Every invitation is not an obligation. An invitation is just that. You get to decide whether you RSVP, yes, I'm coming, I'm going, I'll meet you there, or no, thank you, not for me, not this time, right? We always, always, always get to decide. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. By the way, my name is Laura Amador, and I'm a Laura Doyle relationship coach for wives. I help women to escape the argument cycles and the disconnection and the distance and the coldness and create connection and warmth and love within their marriages. So I'm so glad you're here today. Let's get into the 3 shifts that you can make to end the argument cycles and to be able to have that warmth and peace and connection again. So the 3 things we're going to be covering today are, first, recognizing the trigger, right? Recognizing the invitation, and then reclaiming your agency. This is where you get to decide whether you attend or not, right? Your RSVP, whether it's yes or no thank you, and how to respond in a really empowering way that does not take responsibility for managing his feelings or the whole relationship. This is where you get to really honor yourself, honor what you want, honor your truth and your values. So let's get into the first, right? The first is all about awareness. So this is it. Awareness around the invitation. I know for me, once I started to see bait in that way as just an invitation to engage in an argument, and honestly, so many wives that I speak to, when they choose to no longer engage in an argument or to no longer take the bait, a lot of times what they might see is an escalation of bait at first, because that's the old familiar dance. That was for a long time the culture of the relationship and how you interacted with each other and how you engaged with each other. And if all of a sudden you're not taking that anymore, that's foreign. And so it's very normal and very very common that then he'll be like, hey, that's the dance, these are the steps to our dance, why aren't you doing it? I'm giving you more opportunities, right, to engage with the dance. But really it comes all down to the question, what do you really want, right? How do you want to feel within yourself? Do you want to engage? Do you want to continue an argument cycle? And so being able to just take a step back and see these invitations to engage in an argument as just that, as invitations that you get to decide whether you attend or not this automatic thing that boom, you feel triggered, now boom, you're right into the response, feeling like you have this pressure to do these emotional gymnastics in order to fix something or explain yourself or make him understand, right? Or defend yourself or get each other back into a place of understanding and ultimately connection, because if you're anything like me, that's probably not working anyways. And so coming back to step 2, right? Is step 1, awareness. Step 2 is you deciding whether you want to RSVP yes or no. And you do get to decide. You get to decide every single time. Just because he maybe is seeing you in a negative light in the moment, or accused you of something, or criticized you for something, or called out something that you did and you feel prickly and defensive because of it, you always get to make the choice if you want to engage with that or if you would rather just not. Sometimes you might feel like, yeah, I do. And that's okay. We're all mere mortal humans here. But sometimes you might be like, oh, no thanks. We've been down that path before. I'm not. I'd rather feel calm and peaceful today and go for a walk, right? You always get to decide. And that's where your power comes in, is that realization that you have agency. You have a choice in it. You get to decide how you want to feel and what you respond to. Not only do you get to decide what you respond to, but how you respond to things, which we'll get into in just a second. But let's say, I'd love to give you some examples. Let's say that he says, you're being so sensitive. And you might want to respond. Let's say the old dance is that you'd say, I'm not overly sensitive. You're just being a jerk, right? Such a human response, right? To want to say, I'm not in the wrong because I'm sensitive. You're in the wrong because you're hurt. If you're right, you're being a jerk, right? You're hurting my feelings because you're being a jerk. To put the blame or create the intention is to create more understanding of, actually, I'm not the one who's wrong here, but you're also participating in this, right? But really, it's just creating more disconnection, which you may have already experienced for yourself. Let's say that he says, right, well, I'm always the bad guy, right? Or something like that. I'm always the bad guy. And you might say, well, yeah, when you act like that, of course you're being the bad guy, right? Any response, basically that adds to the fuel or engages is already down, making its way down the slippery slope into an argument and into that argument cycle. And so whether it's giving an explanation, these are all the things that feed the argument cycle. Giving an explanation, defensiveness, a counterattack, more explanation, and then more explanation, right? Usually, whenever I felt like I had to explain myself, even though it sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? I'm just going to explain myself so he can understand where I was coming from. That sounds like a good thing. But in my experience, that almost always led to just more disconnection, more misunderstanding. And not always, of course. There's been times where it was okay. But I think a lot of it depended on where I was coming from. And I know for me, a lot of times what I was really trying to do was control his thinking, to force him to see things my way, when really he's a totally different person with a different life experience and different perspectives that was allowed to see things differently. And so that was part of it too, allowing him to be wrong about me sometimes even. So all that to say, you don't have to take the bait. You get to decide. An invitation is not an obligation. Now, let's talk about some different ways that you can respond that are going to honor you while not, for those moments when you choose to not engage in an argument, to not fight, to not take the bait. Because here's the thing, you can hear something, you can hear what your husband's saying without necessarily responding to the accusation. I know for me, for a long time, I felt like if I'm accused, I have to respond. If I'm criticized, I have to set the record straight. I have to respond and demonstrate that I wasn't in the wrong, right? I just felt so compelled because I wanted to feel clean. I wanted to be seen as good. I didn't want to feel misunderstood. But that's the thing, right? You can agree, you can disagree without arguing. I'm going to say that again. You can disagree without arguing. You can respond without responding to an accusation. And you can be misunderstood, even though that can stink in the moment, right? It can feel disconnecting, but you can be misunderstood without immediately correcting the misunderstanding. It's as they say, actions are so much more powerful than words. If in the moment I'm trying to correct his misunderstanding about me, actually, what is my anxious and desperation of the moment trying to prove something actually correcting? Often not a whole lot. So I'd love to introduce this phrase for you, which is, I hear you. I hear you is a beautiful way to not engage in an argument, to not take the bait. And it still is, I've found it so empowering and so freeing, because it's not saying you're right. It's not saying that. It's saying I hear you. And that's literally all it means. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing what you're saying, because you're my husband, or you're my spouse, right? You're the person I'm creating a life with, that I've chosen to marry. And I'm here to hear you, right? Because that's part of what being a spouse and a life partner is, right? I hear you. Whatever you're saying, even if it's totally off, I'm going to give you that grace and courtesy of just hearing you, right? So that's all it's saying. 3 little words. I hear you, and that's it. Not, I hear you, but this is the way I see it. Or I hear you, but actually you're wrong. Or I hear you, but let me tell you, now you hear me, right? Because let me tell you, I tried all of those. And what I found was that it just cycled us back. It was just a little detour that brought us right back into the argument cycle, because what it was saying was, I'm not really hearing you. I care more about what I have to say than what you have to say. That's what it's actually was saying, right? And so I hear you, and then stopping was the most honest and authentic way to genuinely say, I hear you, and to be honest about it. Again, not meaning I agree with you. I can completely disagree. It's okay. But that might not be the best moment to say it. I've actually found it so freeing to just say, I hear you, and to not have to carry the weight and the pressure of fixing, quote unquote, his thinking, or having to fix anything. Just be present and say, I hear you, and then decide if I want to move on now and walk my dog or whatever I want to do, right? It literally just means I receive the information. So let's say, for example, that your husband says, you don't appreciate anything I do. And instead of saying, that's ridiculous, are you kidding me? I say thank you to you all the time for everything you do. Remember last week when I thanked you for taking out the garbage, right? That right there is an example of setting the record, trying to set the right record straight, right? But again, it's engaging. It's taking the bait. That is taking the bait, because then he could pop back with another evidence, or just feel frustrated because he's not feeling heard, and then you're still feeling misunderstood, and nobody feels any happier or any more connected from that. So instead, you could just say, I hear you. And that's it. And it may not feel like immediate, now he understands me and he gets me. And it might feel like, I was accused of something, right? So it could still feel a little bit uncomfortable for a moment, but that's okay. That's okay. What you just would have created is the emotional safety where he can feel heard, actually feel heard, and you can just be in the freedom of not having to fix his perspective. How freeing is that? What a relief to not have to fix his perspective all the time, right? And I know for me, that could have even been like an opportunity to explore, maybe I could express my gratitude even more often. So let's go into, I'd love to share another way that you can interrupt the argument cycle and honor yourself in a really beautiful, empowering way while not engaging or taking the bait. Now, you might have wondered, I know this is something I wondered myself, why is it so difficult to not respond, to not have this reactive, quick response when you feel triggered? I experienced that many years ago with my husband, but then even more recently as a mom of little ones, right? Again, when a little one is, losing it at the grocery store, oh, I could feel so triggered. I just want to hide and run away. Or your husband says something that just, oh, I can't believe he just said that. He just went there, right? It can feel incredibly triggering. And the time that it takes for trigger and reaction to come can be so fast sometimes that before you know it, you've already said something and taken the bait and engaged. And so your body reacts, and especially if this is a dance that you know the steps by heart, a dance that you've been engaging in for a long time, where trigger, response, boom, goes so quick. And so the thing is, you want to be able to create a tiny, even if it's just a tiny pause between the trigger and the reaction. And I found that just taking a breath for just a moment and asking myself, how do I feel? What do I want? What do I actually want? Do I want to engage in this argument? Do I want to, take the bait and come down that old familiar negative path? For me, the answer is pretty much always no. No thanks. No thank you. So really you can say no, right? And that's where a beautiful way to respond instead is ouch. If you're feeling triggered, so often underneath the feeling triggered, underneath the anger is often pain. Anger is really a secondary emotion, right? If I'm feeling angry towards my husband, it's usually and probably because I'm feeling hurt. And so I feel so authentic and like I'm honoring myself when I'm able to acknowledge that something hurt me, which can feel really vulnerable. It can feel so much easier to respond in anger and to defend myself. But really, vulnerability is what leads to intimacy, and vulnerability is integrity. It goes hand in hand with being able to have real intimacy and deep understanding and connection with my husband. I can't be truly, deeply, intimately connected with him. We can't deeply know each other at the soul level if I'm not being real about my feelings, if I'm hiding my pain beneath my anger. And so, ouch is a beautiful, tiny little phrase, just little word that honors that truth while also not coming back with a comeback or defense, not engaging in the argument, not taking the bait, and not disrespecting him either. It's a beautiful way to respect myself and respect him. And so many, I hear it a lot that at the beginning, because it's a new dance and change is hard, change can be awkward at first. He might say something like, what do you mean, ouch? What are you talking about, right? But even a 1 or 2 year old understands ouch. So that's a beautiful opportunity to, again, not put that burden on yourself of needing to fix or explain or defend. And you could just trust them to reflect and figure that out. And the third way to not engage, which is also very empowering, is just silence. If you find that you're feeling triggered and you ask yourself, what do I really want? And you realize, I don't want to engage, you could. It's always an option to just not engage by not saying anything. Silence is a choice as well. Silence is its own response. Because responding, especially if it's explaining or defending, that takes a lot of energy. And I know for me, I'd much rather use my energy in ways that are filling my cup, or nurturing my relationships, cultivating joy and warmth in some way. That's my energy gets much better spent in those ways. So, let's come back to that question for just a second. What do you really want? If you're anything like me, then perhaps what you really want is to feel loved, to feel connected, to feel understood and seen and valued and cherished, right? And I know for me, whenever I engaged in an argument, I wasn't actually getting any of those things. And again, what I mean by engaged in an argument, it could just be trying to defend myself, right? Or trying to explain or trying to create understanding, right? Trying to explain things. Never led to the things that I really wanted. Whereas, that was in that case trying to win the argument. Whereas having the marriage I actually want, which is beautiful and warm and connected, was actually, I was able to have so much more of that connection through just asking myself, what do I want? Not argue? Okay, I'm going to honor that. I found so much more connection through that. I remember at one point, my husband and I think for whatever reason, I didn't have my wallet. I couldn't find it. And so my husband lent me so that I could run to the bank and get out some money that I needed. He lent me his Visa. And so I took it, and then I came home, went about my day, and completely forgot about it. And it wasn't until a week later that my husband was like, oh, I can't find my Visa card anywhere. And I was like, oh, I have it. I forgot to give it back. But my husband jokingly, he was saying it as a joke. He was like, aha, I bet you went on a shopping spree and there's going to be nothing left on it. Now, he was joking, but honestly, it stung a little. I felt a little, I don't know, I felt like, of course I wouldn't do that. I felt defensive. Even though I could see that it was a joke, but it still made me feel kind of triggered. And I know that I felt kind of triggered because I could feel the urge to defend myself and to say something and to say, no, of course not. I didn't touch it. I wouldn't do that. Right? I could feel that urge right at the surface, right about to come out. But I stopped myself and I asked myself, do I really want to manage his words and his thinking and engage in, even if it wasn't necessarily an argument, is this a conversation I want to engage in? And I realized, nah, not really. Not really. And so instead I just said, ouch, because it did, honestly, even though it might seem silly now, it did kind of sting in the moment. And so I just said, ouch. And, he gave me a big hug and he was like, of course, I'm just kidding. He's like, I'm just glad you had it. I thought I lost it. And that was it. And then we both moved on, and it was such a connecting moment. And it felt so good for me to just honor my truth and receive that hug. And it was just a really sweet moment. So I know for me, being able to have the marriage that I actually want has so often come down to that question that's all about me. What do I actually want? So the way to honor, if you're like me and that's actually what you want, is connection and calm and peace. Just to recap, the 3 ways that you can stop the argument cycle, not take the bait, and not engage in an argument is to ask yourself to first recognize the invitation. Ask yourself if you want to RSVP yes or no thank you. In other words, is this a conversation I want to engage in? And if the answer is no, you can respond with silence, with I hear you, or with an ouch. Now, yes, I have, as I mentioned, I've used this so much and found it so empowering and wonderful with my husband, and even just out in the world, whether it's with my kids or, coworkers or whoever. It's just such empowering tools in the toolkit. So I hope that you will find them empowering as well. And that's what becomes possible in your marriage when you stop feeling like you have to defend yourself all the time or explain things, when you no longer feel misunderstood, when you feel genuinely seen and understood. And that's where real, genuine intimacy can come from, is from vulnerability. Vulnerability where you don't put up your verbal fists and fight back in some way or try to defend or explain yourself, but you just put them down and are vulnerable, which all of those three responses that I just shared with you are incredibly vulnerable, even if it's just choosing silence. So if you're listening to all of this and thinking, yes, okay, Laura, I hear you, I get it, intellectually, anyways, but I feel like in the moment it would be really hard to remember all this. I totally hear you. I hear you. And that's why I do what I do, helping to take things from intellectual, in the mind, into your real life, into your real marriage. So if you'd love a very easy, nice, fun place to start, I have a free guide called 3 Steps to Reignite Connection in Your Marriage. And you will find the link to that in the description. And I do, of course, also offer coaching. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear. And until next time, keep softening into love. Bye bye.